All right, I'm going to be using a couple of different tools today. We'll go through all the tools that are publicly available, like Etherscan and things. Arkham with a Google account, okay? So just feel free to go do that. We are going to use Arkham later, so if you're going to follow along, I really recommend just log into Arkham now, sign up for it. It takes like 5 minutes. Metasleuth, don't worry about it. I'm just we're gonna put the journey onto a Metasleuth chart. Okay, so I'm gonna put in the starting transactions, and then each transaction will map it out on Metasleuth, and then you'll be able to visualize it as we go. Okay, so the challenge itself started out with some transactions, and those transactions not huge in value, but the value here is not important. What's important during this class is the techniques. Okay. Which is what we're going to go through. So I gave you 5 different transactions. All right, let's go and take a look at them. I'm going to pull up the first one. This is all on Ethereum. So let's go to Etherscan first. We'll take a look at the transactions, and we'll take a look at the wallets. We can see this transaction, $1,380, okay, USDT, all important information. We also need the time. We also need the date. Now, we know that it came from a Change Hero deposit address, okay, or Change Hero, more likely to be a hot wallet, actually. We are going to be talking about hot wallets, deposit addresses, what the differences are, how you can spot them, and things like that, because that is critical for this particular challenge. The other tool that I recommend that you have is this one here called MetaSuites. Blocksec.com/MetaSuites. It's a browser extension, but when I open up something like a transaction on Etherscan, I get quick access to tools like Falcon, OpenChain, and Tenderly. We do talk about Falcon in some of our other training sessions, especially during the borrowing security ones. If you haven't done those training sessions, they're completely free, and you can access them from our website, intelligenceonchain.com/courses. You'll see a free section. You'll see the upcoming sessions. The next one's going to be in December. The date's not released yet, but go into Borrowing Security Discord and you can sign up for some classes for free, and then you'll be able to take part in the Sleuthing Basics class. So the reason why I would like you to install MetaSuites is because when we go to Falcon, we just click on the link and it takes us straight to the transaction in Falcon. It gives us a visual representation. So we can see exactly what happens within this transaction. Super simple. This one's just a send and a receive. It comes from a hot wallet out to this wallet here. We've got the crypto labeled as well, USDT. If at some point these transaction screens confuse you, with MetaSuites, you have the option to get it explained by AI, okay? Or you can click on the Falcon link and it's going to give you a visual representation of the actual transaction. Because a transaction is sometimes more than just a send or a receive. It can be multiple swaps in there. It could have, many, especially if it's interacting with a smart contract, it can be many different things in one transaction. Okay, so that's the first tool I'd recommend you get. So our first job really is just to start mapping out some of these transactions. Okay, so again, I'm going to use Metasleuth just to show some of these transactions as we go. You don't need to have access to this. I'm just using it to visualize during the class. Okay, so there's one transaction. Very quickly, I'm just going to post the rest of the transactions as well. Okay, so this is all of the transactions that we can see so far. My first recommendation when you are sleuthing, when you're investigating transactions, the very first thing that you need to do in any sort of case is to label. Now, you can label on Arkham. You can also label on MetaSuites. I label in both, actually, just because both tools provide different perspectives and different techniques. So I always label in both tools. So for this example, during this session, if you like, feel free to just label in Arkham. If you're going to be using MetaSuites as well, feel free to label as we go along. But I think this is critical. It's helped me in so many cases. And it's actually been, just through labeling, it's actually enabled me to link other cases with each other as well. So let's start labeling. Okay. Now, we was given some information by the victim. And that information was that this address, the OX7DF1, this one here, is a bad actor. Okay, this is the person. We know that for sure, so we can put something like, I don't know, I always put something like case ID. So I'll just make up a random case ID, which is, let's go 08/11/25 for today's date. And let's put challenge attacker, something as basic as that. On a tool like on Sleuth, you also have the ability to color as well, which helps me. Wrong color there. Helps me. It also helps victims if they're going to see. If I have exchanges, something like Change Hero or something, I always color them purple. No idea why. It was just I've used purple for years to explain that they are exchanges, in that they're not owned by the attacker, they're not owned by the victim, they're an exchange. Okay, so the victim has sent $1,380 across to this attacker address, and $815 across to this attacker address. So let's just label this as well. So, and to be honest, it doesn't matter if you use the same label, so you can just copy and paste. So I should have copied it, but it's fine. Okay, and then we can color this a different color as well, something like that. Sometimes if it gets really complex in terms of you have lots of lateral transactions in that, you know, one wallet sends the stolen funds to 10 different wallets, I may then choose to use different color schemes to represent each path, but that's just my personal preference. All right, so first job done. Okay, so now we've got to kind of analyze what's going on. Okay, so we've got to look at, and this is a real key part of this challenge. So we'll look at these transactions. We'll find out what happened. A great tool for that is dbank, which if you have MetaSleuth, you get a quick access link to just by clicking here. And alternatively, if you go to Etherscan, load up the address with MetaSuites, you also get a quick link to dbank here. This goes directly to MetaSleuth. This is just a label. This is where you can see different approvals on the address. Right, so let's quickly take a look at the behavior of this particular wallet. We can see that there's 19 transactions. This is ETH transactions, okay? Let's take a look at the ERC20 transactions, okay? You can see what's going on here. It looks like this is all of them. It's only on one page. And we know that this address, 7DF1, received 1,380 in one single transaction. So let's go see that. There it is, 1,380. Right. So now we've got to follow these assets. And one thing I noticed when I was reviewing everyone's answers is that quite a few different people were not being specific to the transactions that were given. And what I mean by that is they would look at this address and they would also highlight all other addresses that interact with it, which might be good if you're trying to show a relationship. But if we're trying to trace assets, we need to be laser focused on the assets that come into this address from our victim. So what do we see here? We see 1,380 tethers entering, because that's an in transaction. We also see a $28.42 transaction in as well. Not sure what this is, to be honest. It doesn't really matter. But then we see basically all of these assets go out here, okay? Plus a little bit of these, like $19 of that, $20 of that. And that goes out to this address, BBDC, okay? So we're not bothered about the rest of these transactions right now. We're just looking at this one coming in, this one coming in, and this one going out. dbank shows you in a more visual format, I would say. So let's go take a look on dbank. Okay, so dbank, if they had a portfolio, i.e. some assets here, liquidity position and things, you would see it under the portfolio here. We want to see the transactions. So we're going to go back to the transaction date was on the 29th of July. So let's go back to the 29th of July. Sometimes just need to click through. Okay, 29th of July, we receive 1,380 ETH. We get a little bit more information with dbank. We know now that that call on Etherscan, remember this call here, this $28 in. When you look at that, that is actually a swap from Ethereum into USDT using a protocol called Mimic for whatever that's worth. Then we see the transactions going out. Okay, so it just gives a different visual format, I would say. So let's just quickly do that in MetaSleuth. Let's just add that next part. I'm going to go to transactions. I'm going to put it in order, and then we need to find our amount, which is here. We also can see that it's got this eye icon, which means it's visible. And so we just then need to show the transaction that goes out, which is this one. Okay, so I'm going to highlight this, click add to canvas, and then there you go. Okay, so what happens next? Well, this next bit was also given to you as part of the challenge anyway, so this is information that we already knew, but let's just follow these assets using Etherscan again. So we'll go to BBDC, we'll look for this 1401 and this 815 coming in, which goes out to this wallet. Okay, we go to transactions again. We can see this wallet's 230 days old. It might be interesting to us, it might not, it depends. So we want the same date, which is the 29th of July. Just need to scroll down a bit. 1401. Okay, you can see that there. We can see that he also received the 815. That's also what we was talking about. So that's the 815 up at the top. And then down below, we have this 6859, which is under 3 transactions of 2335, 2010, 2513. 2335, 2010, 2513. So these are these other receives as well. Okay. We're basically following these two now. So it's like 2,200 something. You can see it gets accumulated with this 10,000 and then it's likely sent out. Is there anything in particular that people see? What can people see here? Anything that's noteworthy? What do we see? One or two key pieces of information on the screen right now that we should be looking at. So in chat, we've got Bridge, we've got a lot of transactions, we have multi-chain, we have Funder Wallet. Joe says service provider signals from the transaction numbers. Right. Let's just look at a couple of things that's happening right now that we can see on the screen right now. Okay. We can see that there's a lot of money associated to the wallet. There's $334,000. Okay, and there's probably assets across multiple blockchains. No, actually, I would say that's mostly ETH, to be fair. But yeah, regardless, there is a lot of transactions. 72,063. Okay, that's a lot of transactions. Is that an individual? Likely not. I mean, it could be a trader, an automated trading wallet or something like that. I guess it could be. But typically, especially if you look at the date and the time of the transactions, we've got a lot of transactions. We've got a lot of different input addresses. Okay, all of these are all different. Okay, there's going to be some that match, but I think if you go through the history, you'll find that a lot are different. So we then need to start to think about, okay, so what is happening here? What is the behavior of this wallet and what does it represent? And Joe came relatively close to it, saying, it could be some form of service. Could be. We don't know which one, but it could be. And this is what I would do, actually. When I come across an address, I tend to just use different tools because it brings different results. So we've got HitBTC deposit address, but look at that behavior. Look at the value over time. It's very up and down. It's like in and out, in and out, in and out all the time. Okay. And you've got somewhere between lowest point was about 63K up to about 1.1 million. But these volumes of trades, I would say, looks like some form of automation there. It's connected with HitBTC, we could say. Arkham tends to have some pretty good attribution, so we could see that. The other thing that we could do on Arkham is use top counterparties. Okay, that's this tab here. If we go to top counterparties, we can see over the last 7 days, all of the transactions. You could check out in transactions and all out transactions. And what do we see? Lo and behold, 459 transactions worth $5.8 million went out to HitBTC. So it's likely to be a service. Now, whether it's HitBTC or not is questionable. All right, so yeah, and this is important. I know we're just at the start here, but it's really important to start to try to identify the behaviors of different wallets and what that could mean. So do as much research as you can on any particular wallet throughout your trace. Okay, so we can probably label this now. What is a deposit address? Tell me in chat, what is it? because my next question is going to be, what is a hot wallet? And I'd like to think most people know this on this call. So give me some answers in chat. What is a deposit wallet? What is a hot wallet? They're both owned by an exchange, but what's the key difference? Typically. Yeah. New programmer says deposit address is often associated with a particular user. Yes, absolutely. If you open up a Coinbase account and you send some ETH to that Coinbase account, you'll find that you'll have your own deposit address. Okay, what's a hot wallet? See some typing. I know this is some of the basics, but it's critical, honestly. And if some people aren't aware, it's really important that they need to know this, that they know this, especially for investigations. Because this case is a caveat to that. Okay, so once we know the standard, we can then start to think about what it means when we see things that are different. Hot wallet is where all of the funds go to or from other sources and from these deposit addresses as well. Right, so as you saw on Arkham a minute ago, pull up that deposit address. If I go to out transactions on the top counterparties, this tab here, all of the transactions from this address go to the HitBTC hot wallets. Typically, the behavior is if you have a Coinbase account, you send your Ethereum to the Coinbase deposit address, and then from there, Coinbase will basically have custody of those assets. And once you trade it or once you sell it or whatever, those assets will go into the hot wallet. The hot wallet is where all deposits come into, but also when you send assets from Coinbase, as an example, out to your MetaMask or Phantom, the assets are going to come from the hot wallet. Okay, so the hot wallet is really everyone kind of interacts with the hot wallet, whether you send assets to an exchange or send from an exchange. Everybody interacts with the hot wallet, whereas a deposit wallet typically is owned. Well, no, it's owned by Coinbase in the example that we're talking about, but actually is only used by one person. But that's not what we're seeing here. So Arkham has labeled this as HitBTC deposit address because of the behavior that all of the out transactions go directly to HitBTC. That completely makes sense. What doesn't make sense is why there's so many input addresses. Why are so many different people using this? Think about that. Why is that? Why are so many people using one deposit address? Close, Judge. I would say you're quite close. You're getting there. You're getting there. Okay, so Joe has said, is it a part of a centralized exchange infrastructure? So the deposit address is owned by HitBTC. Okay, we could say that comfortably. I think, I would be pretty comfortable saying it's owned by HitBTC because all of the assets go to HitBTC. But to have lots of people using a deposit address begs the question, who is operating that deposit address? Remember, it's owned by HitBTC, but who is operating it? So in your case, like with Coinbase owns your deposit address, but you would be operating it, right? So in this case, someone can operate that wallet address. And what we often see in crypto is that smaller exchanges will use bigger exchanges for liquidity. So who remembers here like exchange.cx or, if you've used Change Now or Fixed Float, I'm referring to here those types of services. Now, those three probably had enough of their own liquidity. But if you're just starting up, what you can find, and one option that we see time and time again, is that they'll actually use a larger centralized exchange for liquidity. So you'll go in, you'll do your swap. Let's imagine Change Now. You can swap to any blockchain, you can swap to any asset, and you think you're using service. Let's call it JP Swap, right? You think you're using JP Swap, you go to the website, you put in, I want to swap half an ETH, and I want it to come to this address in US dollars, USDT. You would send your assets, and you would receive your assets from, it works. But in the back end, what's actually happening is JP Swap it will take your assets into its operated wallet. It will send that into HitBTC, and then you'll receive the assets So it's called a nested service. It's just a service, a swap service that's using a larger exchange for liquidity. Now the question is, which service? And honestly, right now it doesn't necessarily matter. What matters is that we understand this principle. Okay. So what does that mean when we look at this? Well, I think what we can say is that if this is the deposit address, okay, this is operated by another service. So let's change the labeling. So we'll call it HitBTC nested deposit address. Okay. Now instead of coloring this red, I'm going to color it purple. Okay, and the reason for that is because I want it to be super clear. We do think that this address is still attacker related, because when we open this up on Etherscan, you remember there was only 19 transactions. That makes sense. So we're pretty sure that this is the attacker. Okay. What about these two outside transactions here that go straight to the nested deposit address? So in that case, what's likely to have happened is that the victim was given this address to then deposit to, which would then send the assets elsewhere. Okay. So in theory, what a typical investigator would do, or let me say a novice investigator, is they might not know this information, and they likely would do something like this. They would check out the data, and then they would just follow the assets out to the next address. Okay, so USDT coming in, it will go out to 4BF, which we know is HitBTC. So maybe actually we should probably label that as well, actually, just to show the trace. Let's just double check. Okay, so OXBBDC. Let's double check. That's this one. Yeah, this looks much more likely to be an individual. Assets go in, assets come out. It's much lower in terms of frequency. There's only 15 pages. There's 72,000 on 4B5F. And how many's on this one? 103 transactions. Yeah, that's exactly right. All the assets come into this account, which we think is then owned by the attacker. Then those assets are accumulated and sent out to this HitBTC deposit address, right? What we're looking for in particular is what happens then. So remember, like Change Now. How does that has anyone ever used a Change Now or a fixed float? How does that service work? With Change Now, it operates in a similar way. You get a deposit address. Once you've deposited, they would go to the hot wallet, and then hot wallet on a different blockchain would then send you the assets that you requested. It's a swap service, but you can change addresses as well. You can change blockchains again. Okay, so we definitely got that right. So we can see this accumulation. That accumulation makes things a little bit more difficult for us. It's always a little bit of a problem, that, because now we're mixing other people's funds as well. And so what else can we do? And remember, that's just the USDT. So let's check this USDC. That comes in 6859, comes into this address here. Put this in order. 6859. Where are you? Oh yeah, it was the three transactions in. So it's this one, and this one. What then happens? Some get sent out there, but the majority get sent out here to the exact same address. Now, what's good about this USDC one is it's 6,859 versus 7,677. So yes, there's accumulation, but it's less accumulation. Most of these particular assets are our victims' assets. So again, we need to think about that. We need to think about, okay, so from a tracing perspective, we've got high levels of accumulation in the USDT. We have lower levels of accumulation in the USDC. So which one is going to be easier to follow, or at least has more confidence when we're following it? Yeah, the one with less accumulation, for sure. Now, we know that this is a nested service. So let's take a look. Let's break this down, this USDC. Key points here is the date, the time, and the value. What I recommend is get the transaction hash, copy the transaction hash, go to Arkham and put in the transaction hash. Record this information. You've got the date, the 7th of August, and you've got 1454 UTC. Time zones are important. I operate in the UK. Sometimes I'm UTC, sometimes I'm UTC +1, depending on British summer. If I don't check Arkham, I could get real confused and I could be looking at the wrong hour. We've got people from Sao Paulo here. We've got people from Dubai. Check the time zone. That's what, and specifically on Arkham, because we're going to use Arkham to do this trace, okay? So on the tool that you're going to use, get the right time. 1454, and it was worth 7,680, 7.68K. So what can we do at this point? We've got the time, we've got the date, we have the value, we know the input address. What can we do? Look at the outgoing transactions on the same date. Yep, check the same amount and time using visualizer. Okay, yeah, all right, let's do it. So follow along with this because this is pretty important on Arkham. I'll give you the link. Actually, it's just we're going to go back to the home link now anyway. So if you're on Arkham, go back. This is specifically to do time and value analysis. So to do time and value analysis, which is what we're going to do, because what we're assuming is that nested service has allowed the individual to swap the asset and swap the blockchain potentially, swap addresses. So we need to then follow the value and the time and see what's happening around that time and value, right? So let's do that. We go to Arkham home screen. And the reason why we go to the Arkham home screen is because it has all transactions across all blockchains right here, regardless of the address. Okay, if I open this up, you see like these 10 transactions are all happening in the same second, you know? So it's literally all blockchains that Arkham support, all transactions. If you refresh, you're going to get some different ones, right? So it's an incredibly busy ledger. Let's put it that way, right? So what we can do is we can take the date and time and we can take the USD value and we can take a look, see what's happening. Now we might have an issue here because 7,600 or whatever it was isn't actually that much in terms of value. That means you're going to see more transactions of around the same time. So what I recommend you do whilst you're on this screen is you filter from our attacker's address here. So you got the OXBBDC. We filter from that address. So we put that address in here. And now specifically, we will only see transactions from our address. But if we remove this filter, this from filter, it'll open everything up again. And the reason why I do it this way, filter from first, is because we'll find our specific transactions. Imagine this is like 1.675 ETH, you still need to know the US dollar values and it's hard to remember. So I always pull up all of the transactions, look for the ones I'm looking for, put in the specific values. So what I can do here is I've got this 2.28. So the first thing that I need to do is put in the second thing I need to do is put in the dollar filter. So how do we do that? And this is really important. This is, the lower the value here, the tighter it needs to be, because there's more transactions and we need to filter out as many as we can. If it's $1.2 million, there's going to be less $1.2 million, right? So it's going to be easier to see. You can have the value a little bit wider. But because this is relatively low in value, I would say, less than sort of 40 grand or something like that, you need to be quite tight. Anything above 40 grand, you could be a little bit wider, maybe a couple of $100 either side, but you want to set a target. Now, our highest value is going to be what you see on the screen, the 7.68K. So that is our highest value because no exchange will give you more money than what you put in. Okay, so let's go with that. Let's just go 7,681. Okay, so I'm just going to go dollar extra just in case. We know it was less than that. It was like 6,777. So we should be fine with the higher end. The lower end of the value is really, really important. Okay, so what I would recommend, something as tight as this, we probably go $50 less. So let's go 7,631. So we've got a very specific dollar value window. Now we're also lasering in on this particular transaction. So we also need to apply a filter for this date. That's the 7th of August. On Arkham, you have to select at least 2 dates. Now, this is where the fun part starts. Now we've got our filters, we've got our time, we've got our value, and we've got our address filter. We can now remove the address filter. Once we do that, we're going to see every other transaction that matches the same date and the same value. So what we need to do now is we need to go to the exact time. We've got the right date, but we need to go to the exact time. 1454 UTC. So we need to go to 1454 UTC here in this column. Now we need to put it in order. So click time, and it's starting with the 6th first, but you'll see it's close to midnight there. So let's probably jump forward. Let's go 400 pages in. We just navigate forward until we find our transaction. And here it is. Here it is. 1454 OX BBD. One thing I forgot to do is to label. So let's go label that address. You know what I see? I see a bunch of question marks. That's what I see. So the reason why I'm saying that is because at 1454, we can see that our assets go into the HIT BTC. That's likely the deposit. And if you need to get to know how services like Change Now or Fixed Float use, so go ahead and use them, please. Just even send a test swap just so you can see what the infrastructure looks like on chain. But for me, that Fixed Float one comes 10 seconds before he's made the deposit. That doesn't make sense. Someone said TST71, 10 seconds before. I mean, it could be. Again, it depends on the infrastructure of the service, right? All right, so what I see here is several things happening. We see our transaction going to the deposit address. We know that. And then every transaction below this is a potential contender. Could be where our assets come out. First things I want to do is rule out higher value ones. Now, you'll see here that all of these are lower value. So that kind of means that we need to keep them all into consideration. What about these smart contract ones? I would argue that Aerodrome, I think we would have seen it here on, instead of it going to HIT BTC, I think we would have seen it go to Aerodrome. So I think we can rule out these ones, these smart contracts. And I think we can rule out this MEV one. This one down here, this one right at the bottom, that's Changely. It's also a swap service like Change Now, Fixed Float. So what we then need to do is bear each one of these in mind. Okay, so I would say these three on the Tron network, and I would say probably this one down at the bottom. Okay, we need to be aware of. So what happens then? What we need to do is just label, really. So we right click, we open up each address. So we've got 4 addresses here, which could be the contender, and we can't specifically say which one yet. So in Arkham, if you double click the label, you can type over the address. It still keeps the address. So when you hit copy, it'll still copy the address, but you can add a label. So let's call this, let's put the same case ID, and let's go nested output 1, I guess. It doesn't matter what you call it, just as long as you've got a name that makes sense to you. Because this is where we need to do some analysis. I'm going to call this number 2. I'm going to call this one number 3. And I'm going to call this one number 4. Remember that page 521? Remember the filters? If I click refresh right now, it's going to reset all of the filters, but it will label these addresses for us, and we will see the labels that we've just put in. I'm not going to do it now because we'll see it later anyway. So just label. That's the first thing that you should do. And the reason why we do that is because if this guy follows the same laundering pattern, we can take a different transaction and see if it goes to the same place. And if that's the case, that's a little bit more concrete than us saying, oh, it goes to TALB or it goes to TWTF. At this moment in time, we would just be guessing. So let's go back and let's see what else we have in terms of transactions. We see this 12,000 goes in. I've not actually done this one before, so let's give this one a go. So let's do exactly what we just did. We will go to the Arkham button up at the top, back to this main page. I'm going to reload it again just to start. From address, we've already been through this. Okay, now we want the 12,000 going out. So now we're going to put in the US dollar value, and this is the highest value is going to be 12,301. Let's do 10. Yeah. 12,310. And I don't know, let's give this is a little bit higher in value, so let's maybe give this I'm going to give it a $200 leeway. So let's go like that. So I've got a $200 window. We also need to add in the date. So this is going to be the 27th of the 6th. So that's 1805 on the 27th of June. Okay, so it's a random 12,000 250. But we're checking if he's using the same laundering pattern. Okay, so let's now remove the deposit address from the filter. So same thing, we go, we make sure this is in ascending order or descending, whichever one you prefer, and we just skip through the pages. We want 1805 on the 27th. That's a little bit too far, so let's go to page 200. Oh, I've done that the wrong way, I think. Need it in, yeah, that's better. So let's try that way. So let's go through page 300. Okay, so this is 1217. Let's try page 600. Okay, that's too far, which is good. That means it's going to be within the range. You can see there's a 625 page max limit on Arkham. We're getting closer, and it was 1805, 27th, 1805. So let's go back a little bit. Let's go 450, 1801. Perfect. So because we've labeled now, we're going to see very easily our transaction, and there it is. So now we're looking for transactions after this, and we're going to see if they're going to go to one of the places that we've already labeled. Okay, and I'm not sure if this is going to work, by the way. What do we see there? Can anyone spot it? Yeah, 1454 was the other one. I just chose a random one. This 12. When I selected the transaction, I just picked a random one because I'm testing for the laundering path, not necessarily our assets at this time. We're trying to see if he uses the same laundering path. What do you see? Oh, sorry, text is too small. Let me zoom in. There you go. Nested op 4. Op is output. Nested output 4. So what does that tell us? We had 4 potential addresses that it could have been. Think about this. What are the chances of another random person sending the same amount of assets through the same service to end up in the same address? It's not going to be the case, right? So it's not just coincidence. If you go to this address, this OXBBD, and you follow any of these HitBTC deposit addresses out, you're likely to find that it's probably going to go to the same place. Yes, the same address for both actions, different dates, different amounts, but it's the same output. It's on the Solana blockchain, right? So we best go and take that transaction. Oh, I didn't want to do split view. Okay, fine, whatever. So I get that transaction, okay, and now I can put it onto our chart. Solana. Okay. When this happens on a charting tool, you kind of just need to move things around, right? So what do we have here? Now, I've done a bunch of work. You'll see on my Twitter account that DQ5JWB is one that I get questioned about a lot. When I've used Changelly, and by the way, it's really important that you try test small amounts through these weird exchanges and stuff so you understand how they work. If you understand how they work, you're going to be able to label things. You're going to get more of an understanding of how things are viewed on the blockchain. So I know this is Changelly because this is my label. If I didn't label this in Metasleuth, I'm not sure this would be here. Okay, this label. I don't think Metasleuth know about this address. All right, so this is the transaction. You'll see there's actually 2 branches of the same transaction. That's fine. What we tend to find is that this one with the 0.002 Sol, this is probably owned by whichever service this is, in this case, Changelly. So we could probably rule out this one. I don't think this one's going to be anything to do with the attacker. I think this is just, them automating the gas feed and the gas distribution so that the services can work. So I'm pretty confident we can just remove that. All right. So what can we do now? How can we cement this even further? Because that's the point here. We're not guessing. The aim here is not to guess, it's to prove. Because if this goes to court, we need to be able to show and replicate, like I'm doing today, how we do this. What else can we do now? Yeah, for sure. We can continue the trace. But to prove that this is the output address, linked to that same account, what I recommend doing is comparing the transactions here with the transactions here. Okay, so if I just go to color these again, I'm just to make it nice and visual for us, so we know that this is some form of automated service. We're not bothered who owns it. All we're bothered about is that we can see the input, we can now see the output. Okay, so let's go across there, and let's also give this a label. Let's call this output. We need the case ID. Output. Let's put to confirm. So we can go through the list here of transactions going in. We can look at the dates. Let's pick some big ones. So we want the outputs to this BTC, hit BTC. 1,100 USDT goes out on the 22nd of July, 1904. So there's two here right next to each other. Let's see if we can just take a look at this USDT one. Open that up, put that there, refer back to that in a second. Okay. So the question then is, does this account receive 1,100 USDT on that date? And again, I don't know. We're about to find out. So that's 22nd of July. Scroll down. 22nd of July. Would you look at that? Right there. This one. Add to canvas. Oh, it's not going to show. It's just one line because it's the same currency. But if I break this edge up, it's going to show two. Here is the second one. What's the difference? Why is it 1,100 going in and 1,095 coming out? It's the fees, right? It's used a swap service. A swap service is not going to do it for free. They want to earn something. It's more going in than it is coming out. What comes out is less. There's fees. If you use Coinbase, if you use Change Now, Fixed Float, they all charge a fee. So it makes sense that there's a $5 fee. I think that's fairly reasonable, actually. But what have we proven now? We've proven, first of all, we looked at two different inputs and they went to the same address, output 4. Remember that? And now we've gone back and we've cross-referenced another transaction input, date and time and value, with the date, time and value of the input with the date, time and value of the output. So I'm pretty certain that this is the address that this attacker is using. And that is what most people miss during this challenge. Okay? That is what most people miss. You didn't recognize that this deposit wallet, remember a deposit wallet is typically owned and used, it's typically used by one person. This deposit wallet is used by thousands of people. That should have been the check in the box to say, okay, something different's going on here, which probably means that this is his deposit address for a subservice somewhere. So if you're using a deposit address that goes to that, this is a subservice hot wallet, even though it's hit BTC's deposit address because of the liquidity provision. We need to be able to label these addresses appropriately because, as you can see, it's critical that we pick the right transactions to do the time and value analysis on. And that's the key behind this particular case. That's a great point, Noob, because in our courses, what I like to teach is the manual way to go and look at these solutions. I understand that corporate, compliance, and I understand that law enforcement will want to do things quick. They'll want to use a big tool like Elliptic, Chainalysis, whatever. Sometimes they're wrong. And so what I like to do during our training sessions and our courses is teach people how to do it manually, like this. How to look, how to think critically about the situation, about what's happening, and how to make sense of what's going on. Because not all these tools do it. They're all automated, okay? And that can be a problem. What happens then? Let's just let's finish this out. We'll do it real quick from here because it's the same thing, but there's one more thing that I want to show you. Okay, we've got this. Okay, let's take a look at this address real quick. I'm going to get rid of all these Arkham tabs up at the top. This is our new address. Okay, this is the attacker output. This this was quite funny actually. And again, I'm not sure if this is going to prove exactly because I'm doing this off the cuff. But again, I'm doing this in real time because it's the process, it's the thinking that's really important here. You see this Bridges transaction coming in. Well, Bridges it's a bridge and it has its own explorer, which means we can go and see where these assets came from. This 3.41 Sol. So let's go do that. Let's go to Bridges Explorer. And if you're looking for an explorer, this is how you search properly for it. So Bridges, put it in double quotes, and let's go Explorer, again, double quotes. These are called Google Docs. If you're in investigations, you'll be very familiar with Google Docs, but it's very specific and it will always bring the results that you want to see. So we've got this Explorer. We have this output address that we want to test. And we're looking for a transaction on the 16th of August, see what comes up. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes we need to go back and get the transaction. But look, so this one comes from, he's not only used a swap service to try and obfuscate their assets, he also used a bridge. And the bridge has now directly linked the input address, the BBD, to the output through the bridge. So we've proven it multiple times. We know that we now can say concretely that this is exactly the right output. Perfect. So what I would do is I would actually show that on here as well. If I'm going to give this to law enforcement, so I want the deposit hash, I would show this deposit hash on here. Okay, it goes to bridges. Then I would show the output hash, destination hash, which is this one. And then I would provide the URL directly to the Explorer. So whoever's referencing this, there it is. This is obviously owned by Bridges as well. This asset here, this wallet here. So I'm just going to show this. No, I'll leave that there actually, just to keep all of the right information at the right place. But what I tend to do here is I keep all of the services and things at the same sort of level, and I color them the exact same thing. So let's color these white. Let's go. Okay, this is Bridges. There we go. Let's put some black text. This is also Bridges. Okay. And the output is back to this address. And I would add a label here saying, Mr. Law Enforcement, what you need to know is that this specific URL is going to take you to the proof that these two addresses are linked inexplicably. Right? So we've gone from a situation where we had many different outputs. We thought it went in to hit BTC. It's not true. We've whittled it down to 4 different outputs. We've confirmed that one output is common, and we have a bridging transaction that is now linked directly to both addresses. So we are absolutely certain that this is the output. Perfect.